right, welcome to the service garden. Behind me is a little plot of land that we sublease from Jeff Andrews, who is subleasing town-owned land. So congratulations, Town of Falmouth. We own this. Your tax dollars help pay for it. It's now protected in agriculture. The pond parcels are owned by the 300 committee, and it connects a ton of their trail systems. It's also protected in conservation, protecting the pond ecosystems. It's a beautiful thing that happened, and it is the reason Farming Falmouth exists. So we formed out of the working group that saved Tony Andrews' farm. So that involved the 300 committee, the Cape Compact of Land Trust, and a whole bunch of amazing groups and citizens that just were like, no more housing on farmland, and here we are. We're getting to enjoy it. So the idea of Farming Falmouth, subleasing some places around the farm. So we have a community orchard, which you drove by. It's in its 4th year. And then this is on its 2nd year. We basically wanted to create classrooms because it's really hard to teach this stuff while you're on a whiteboard or a PowerPoint, right? So thank you for braving the weather, because we're New Englanders, we can do this. My focus today was going to be on bed prep.
Before you begin, can we just say thank you?
To me?
All the land. To
Oh.
you. And yes. Because
Yes.
I know you've worked really hard.
Yeah,
So thank you.
thank you. I did a lot of unpaid work in the 6 years of this organization, and this is like my opportunity to get paid to do what I love, so I'm really grateful that the organization's come so far, and we've had a lot of help from the community and support, like y'all coming to our workshops. So I'm really grateful that I get to farm in this town. It really wasn't working out any other way, so I'm grateful. And I get to farm specifically for donating, which is just so sweet on my heart. Like, I don't have to hustle. In my previous farming, I sold to restaurants, and so you gotta pick it, wash it, deliver it, make sure they want it, call, make sure your harvest matches up. There's so much hustling that you have to do when you're an owner farmer. So I'm really grateful that I just get to donate it to people in need. So it goes to the Falmouth Service Center, or it goes to the Cape and Islands Veterans Center, which is our new partnership this year, which I particularly as a veteran really want to do more partnerships with. And so there's lots of volunteer opportunities throughout the season here. So the workshops are here and they're on Saturdays. They're more learning, right? We're focused, we're sitting, we're asking, open questions. It's the same thing on the weekdays, except there's more work focused. And so if you want more experience on the farm here, feel free to come. There's little slips of paper you can take home. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'd love to see you out here helping out. And again, it all just goes back into the community. So I do things a little bit differently than some farmers. I'm a no-till regenerative farmer. And so that's some lingo I'm going to unpack for y'all. And I have absolutely no shame on any other farmer that's been doing it any other way. I tractor farmed, I've tilled, I've ran the tractors, I've done it all. But I've transitioned into a no-till small-scale farmer because it just feels better to me and my lifestyle and kind of the sustainability aspect of my life that I'm trying to hold up. So no-till is the idea that there's a lot going on in the soil and it benefits us to not disturb it. And so what tilling does is it inverts the soil. It flips it on its head, basically. So any of the good microbes, any of the good bacteria that have established themselves, the worms, the decomposers, the things that are actively doing some work in the soil, get destroyed by that sunlight, and then you're flipping weed seeds right to the surface. Does anybody have any idea how long weed seeds can exist in the soil? 30, 50, 100 years, some of them. So every time you flip, you're bringing them right up to the top. And so a lot of times tillage agriculture can have a lot of weeding, and that requires more cultivation, which is more disturbance to the soil, which sets you back every time. And the why of that is sort of like, if you look at a forest, who's out there fertilizing and tilling and making the forest work good? Nobody. It's the layers and layers of decomposing leaves, worms eating them up, sticks falling. It happens all on its own. And then it's fertilized by its own existence, and then the wildlife and the worms do their thing. So worms get Employee of the Month always for me. Like, they are the hardest working fertilizers, decomposers. So if I put compost down, they're taking that compost, they're nibbling it, and they bring it down. And they create air pockets, they create waterways for the water to get down into the soil. So every time you're chopping those worms in half with tillage, it's not the best thing. The other thing that tillage will do is, so the tiller goes down, depending on the machinery, right? You go down a foot, maybe a little bit more if you got the right equipment. And right underneath all that layer, it creates a layer of compaction. And what that does is that the plant roots go down and they're all happy, happy, happy because you've fluffed it up and made it nice for them, and then they hit the wall. And that wall also stops water from moving deeper into the soil. So in big rain events, farms are like washing away in the Midwest because there's just this hard pan, they call it. So, and then the weight of the tractor compacts that soil as well. So there's all those things are happening, and there's ways to undo it. I worked at Pariah Dog Farm for 4 years, and we got this tool called a subsoiler. And the day we got that, it changed the look of everything. Everything grew better. And what it is just a one big 20-inch shank you pull behind the tractor, and it just grips it. A big, big hole, but it doesn't flip anything. It just fluffs. And so that is what this tool does for me. Anybody know what this is called? A broad fork. Remember its name, get one, borrow one. This is my main bed prep. Rather than tillage, I fluff. I'll show you when we get over to the actual field, but you get it all the way in, and if you can get those tines down, all you're doing is leaning back. Fluff it, go back another bit. Stomp on it, it's fun, you do a little dance, you wiggle it around, you get it all the way down, and it gets easier every year. So that's the key. If it's really hard, you're using the right tool. Because imagine your roots, right? Imagine those plants, those little soft little white roots. That's impossible. So the idea is you're making a hospitable environment for those plant roots to get happiness, which is in the soil. So the nutrients are down there, the minerals are down there, all the things that they need are lower in that soil. Compost is great, but they do need the minerals, which are in the soil particulates. And all that's being broken down by the bacteria, the microbial activity in the soil. Another reason we don't want to keep flipping it and disturbing it, right? And so a lot of plants prefer mycelial or bacterial dominated soils, depending on what they are. Are those raindrops?
One thing I might add,
yeah,
is if you are going to till a little bit, you're going to turn your soil a little bit. And I agree with Jenny, less is better, but we till ours up, we move it and stuff. Don't do it too early. We're here, it's April what today? 8th? 7th? 6th. Whatever it is. Whatever it is, it's too early to start really working your soil. You can wreck your soil for the whole season. I have a little bit of a cold going on. You can wreck your soil for the whole season if you do it too early. Because what happens is you really should be able to take a handful of your soil, put it in your fist, and have it not stay like that. If it stays in a little ball after you do that, it's really too wet to start doing much to it. And what happens is those clumps will stay there. And we used to rototill our garden and everything, and we've made mistakes too early, and you suffer.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to compact it, so that's what the tiller does when it's wet and sloppy. It's just.
So when?
When? Well, it's been really wet. All right.
Yeah.
If we'd had a very dry spring, which we don't usually around here, it probably could now. But the soil is maybe not here because it's so well drained, but a lot of the soils are just too wet. And if you have any clay in your soil, that you got to wait till it's really dry.
Yeah.
So
We're lucky around here that
yeah.
I mean, lucky depending on who you ask, right? We're sandy, right? So it's less compaction happens that way, but the continued tillage and weights, which is the tillers weighs a lot. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the name of the tool you're using again is a broad tiller?
Broad fork.
Broad fork.
Broad fork.
I gotta write everything down.
Me too. I usually see my notes in my phone. Yeah. The tillage that so some of these are farming tools, and unless you have a giant garden, you're probably not going to invest in these. But they're pretty awesome. So I wanted to show you. So this thing is called a tilther. I'm going to go backwards, but of course my string isn't. So it's pretty low tech. We got a new one this year because this is my personal one, and the nonprofit needs to own their own stuff, and we got grants, so now we did that. So what this does is gets that top 2 inches. That's it. It's called a tilther. Yeah. So
Is that from Johnny's?
yeah. So when soil nerds talk about soil, a lot of times we're talking about tilth, which is kind of the way it feels in your hand almost. And soil conservationists will talk about reduced tillage is one of the main soil conservation methods. Covering your soil at all costs is the other one. So that could be a cover crop, that could be a mulch, that could be a plant, could be cardboard. There's so many number of ways you can do that. But the idea is that rain events come down, and if you have exposed soil, it's just like psh, psh. You can watch it like after your driveway after rain, if you haven't gotten your mulch down yet, right? Just mud everywhere. And so what little good soil you have is just like bow, bow. In the Midwest, it's like washing into the Mississippi, right? So we don't have as many of these problems, but we have to be mindful of the way we're treating our soil because it does all the work to feed us, right? So it's the building block of us. Like if you think about it, the cows that make the cheese ate the grass that came from the soil, right? And the nutrient level from the soil up is what we end up with. And so when I talk about soil, I'm very impassioned about it because it links straight to nutrition and our health. And those things are just my shtick. So it's like, I get real nerdy about it. So just keep in mind. Some other tools that I am a really big fan of is having less is more. So I'm a scuffle hoe, stirrup hoe girl from way back, which is why I have a wheel hoe with a stirrup on it. So if anybody rides horses, this looks like what you put your foot in, hence why they call it a stirrup. This by far is if you have walkways, if you have a lot of weeding to do, you can jog with this thing. Just pop, 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 pop. Get a little exercise in. This is a newer style tool, again from Jeny's, my favorite company, employee owned. They care and they're workers, and so they go for physical best practices, right? So long-handled tools are always going to be better. So if you can stand and work, way better, right? Your knees, your hips, your neck. This guy is cool because on one handle, you can have several different tools. So they've created an interconnected system. So I mean, your shed doesn't look like my truck. It's ridiculous looking. I know it. We all know it. But it's cool if you have a garden and you have a bunch of different style things and a bunch of different weeding to do. You have one handle, a bunch of different tools. They're now coming out with rakes, bed rakes that also fit on it. I mean, less is more. It's pretty great. But these are the tools. So the collinear hoe is by far one of my favorites. The stirrup hoe and the collinear hoe are very serious. Sharpening them is honestly a really good idea. Every year, once I do it, I'm like, why don't I do that 3 times a year? It works better. But it's kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down technique. So you're just going along your rows, easy, keep yourself standing. Yep.
Johnny's tools cost more, but they're worth it.
Yeah.
They
American-made,
last.
yeah.
They last, truly. So
Even when you treat them poorly, like me. They're oak, like American-made oak handles. They're very conscious about where they get their products built and made. If you do have to be on your hands and knees, this is my favorite tool. It's a Korean style digging. I don't even know. A homie?
Yeah, like my homie.
It's my homie. Exactly. I plant with this, I weed with this, I do most things with this. I keep a tool belt and it's the only thing that's in there. I mean, huh?
It's dangerous. Having it on your tool belt. You sit down on that, you're in trouble.
I have a very thick leather tool belt and it fits in the back pocket, which I will bring out and show you. I'm a big fan of tool belts. The carpenters don't get to have all the fun. I can pass this around. So we keep a couple of these at the we have 4 of those for the service gardeners to use. A homie. It's a Korean style tool. A hand hoe is what we can also
Adjust your mic a little bit here.
adjusting the mic.
Just being awfully.
Schnickety.
There we go.
Schnickety. Okay. Some other tools of the trade I really appreciate. People get really upset about weeding. I don't weed much because I mulch so heavy, which we'll talk about that tool once we kind of walk over there and we can see it. Flame weeder. It's fun to use. I don't have my clicker, so I'm not going to light it. But
Ghostbusters.
yeah, I have very pregnant photos of me flame weeding. Just it's a lot of times they come with a cart, which is really helpful. This thing's heavy when it's full. But driveways, I mean, if you can avoid chemicals, please do it. Like there's options. But so we discovered flame weeding at Pariah Dog when we were fighting with carrots. So if anybody's tried to germinate carrots, they take a long time, then they come up, and the weeds have already come up with them. So you have this little tiny if you want carrots, you gotta get in there and tease the weeds out, and it's a little bit of a nightmare when you have hundreds and hundreds of feet, right? And so we went to some classes, we learned from some pros, and their whole thing was that if you go out and flame weed on day 6, day 7 or 8, those carrots curl up, and you've just decimated all their competition, and they grow great. The weeding's easier. Another technique is putting a board down on top of your germinating carrots. That keeps that moisture down. They're finicky, so you want to keep the moisture high on top of them the whole germination period. So if it's dry those 7 days, you want to water them. But if you have a small garden, putting just a board down, 2x4, something clean, pine, whatever is not full of formaldehyde, but putting that down over your seed rows, and then set your timer day 6, get it off. You don't want those brand new babies to come up and hit darkness and moist wood. They're very sensitive. They'll just rot.
Cardboard do that trick as well?
Cardboard could do that as well. It's harder to get it up in some ways, just to get a strip, because you do want moisture if it rains. I'd say try anything to get the carrots to germinate, because homegrown carrots are just top of my list.
So I'll tell you what we did on our farm.
Yes.
We put burlap down, all right?
Burlap's great.
Now, I had read quite a little article about this technique. So you seed your carrots, right? You put your burlap down, which keeps the moisture in, because you can water right on top of your burlap. Now, here's the rub. Supposedly, things grow up through the burlap, all right? And if you're on top of it, I never had this success, maybe you will. You pull the burlap up and the weeds come and the carrots stay. Now, I guess you've got to time it.
It's like
But
6
anyway,
days.
so they come up and then you pull it up and there's magic, it's just carrots. Well, I didn't find that happening. I tried it many years.
It's like waxing.
But I do want to tell you that the burlap does work for getting your carrots up, because they take about 14 days to germinate, and you need them to be wet the whole time, just like parsnips also need to be wet the whole time, or you won't get any. And that's why people plant the parsnips in the spring, because it's usually wetter and everything. So the other thing you can do is, as Jeny said, is just till a little area where you're going to, till up, or however you prepare your bed for your carrots. And don't plant your carrots yet. Let your weeds come up, all right? And you can zap them with that. You can
Go through the wheel hoe.
You can do the wheel hoe. You can do it, and then plant your carrots. Now, you're still going to get some weeds, but don't till it again, because you don't want to bring those weeds back up that you just did. Do you follow along? So that's something to try.
Every plant's
It's
got
all
its
in the
tricks.
same. It's all in the same mindset of what
Yeah.
Jeny's
There's
doing.
techniques, and they don't all work for everybody's soils, everybody's lives. Not everybody's comfortable with a flame weeder. Not everybody's got a 2x4 lying around. So you use what you got. Cardboard is easy to come by.
An expense. You have to think about expense. Do you want that tomato to cost you, each tomato to cost you $100? I mean, I'm just saying, you need to think about what you want out of your garden. Are you going to garden for years? Can you invest in equipment because you're going to garden for years? So all those come into play when you don't care. You'll spend anything because it's your hobby, and you'll buy anything you can, But so you take into consideration all that stuff. So,
Does anybody have any questions so far? I feel like I've thrown a lot at you already. Can we take it? Yeah.
Just to make sure I understand this, so I have beds from last year that have weeds now.
Mhm.
It's okay to pull those weeds out now?
oh yeah,
Get in there. Yep.
Okay.
get them
or a
up
long
and out.
tool. Yeah.
Before they go to seed. Don't let them go to seed, I mean, hundreds of thousands of seeds from those weeds are in your garden, and as Jeny said, they stay forever. So,
I was gonna weed yesterday, and then I was like, wait a second, we can play with tools and show you guys how easy some of these things are. I might let Warren do. She's an expert with spraying, and I am not. So she's gonna cover that, and then we're gonna walk into the field, and we're gonna show you the broad fork. I'm gonna show you basically how I bed prep and talk a little bit about compost.
Is it too late to start planting seeds?
no, now's the time.
Now is the moment.
I've started my eggplant and peppers, but not my tomatoes yet.
Yeah, I have everything in the germination chamber right now, but that's just because I have a greenhouse. So I have plenty of space to protect it, and but now's your moment.
And when you plant this, after you plant the seed, years ago they used to say to put it in a bag, a plastic bag, and stick it under your bed till the seeds come up or something. I never started.
Well, you can do that. And you can, is that your husband?
Yeah.
You can get him. Honey, get down there and see if they're up.
So I'm a big
Are they
fan of
up?
egg cartons. Egg cartons are one of my favorite, cheap methods, because if you're like, I got like 5 tomato seeds from last year, you would just stick them all into one little egg carton spot and just fill an egg carton with nice dirt and see what comes up. And the beautiful thing about eggplant, tomatoes, and peppers, which next session is going to be all about those guys, right? May 25th, I think, is our next one. Ideally, if all the weather and everything aligns, we'll be thinking about putting those in. Okay, so I'm going to do mine maybe a little bit earlier, just so that you guys have it all in your heads, and in the next couple of weeks, you'll be ready to go ahead and do it. But if you get those egg cartons started now, put them in a plastic container without holes in the bottom, and then the egg cartons will sit in it, just so that you don't want them sitting in water, but you don't want them to dry out. You want the egg carton to stay moist, or that will dry the soil out, which will slow your germination. Spray bottle is great for that. But you just can put a bunch in each cell, different type in each little hole. They tease apart really well. And I do that to save space. Not everybody's got a greenhouse. Even though I have a greenhouse, I'm pretty I don't like to waste space. And so I tease them apart and then I put them in the 6-pack. So I know every cell is full. I don't like to do big trays and put one seed in each and then be like, well, 6 of them are empty. What the heck? So it's a great way to do it. So maybe that's how your father did it, germinating it. Paper plate, some people do, paper towels. There's ways to and then you can make a plastic bag greenhouse. Doesn't have to be under your bed though.
It can be.
Take it away, Warren.
All right. So I am I worked as a plant pathologist, right, for Ciba-Geigy Corporation and Syngenta Corporation. Yes, the bad guys. And I put out field trials for about 10 years on many different crops and everything. And during my stay there, I always gardened organically as much as I could at home, but this was not an organic company, believe me. So I wore protective clothing and the whole schmash. I had during my stay there, I had 3 different pesticide licenses. I had a research one, I had a commercial one, and I had a home gardening one. So I know a lot about chemicals and spray and product and everything. I'm only talking today about organic materials. There are no conventional, non-organic materials I'm talking about today. They are all approved by something called the Organic Materials Review Institute. I have little papers to hand out, or you can take a picture of this information. But I wrote the names down. So when you go to get a material, you want to see either for organic gardening, or they'll have OMRI. That means Organic Materials Review Institute. Have you heard of OMRI when you go to get a product? How many people actually have ever sprayed anything or have a sprayer? Okay, so you want to make sure that it's OMRI, because that means it's organic and approved by this board. So I'm going to show this around. This is actually for lawns, but it does have the OMRI. You see that? Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Who wants to see that doesn't know? So,
What's it stand for again?
Organic Materials Review Institute. And this is an organization that looks in chemicals and decides whether or not they are going to be, allowed to be for organic uses. And this, probably the OMRI stuff started, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago when organic became a little more popular. So you want to look for that. I'm going to talk about sprayers before I talk about this. I am always thinking about monetary responsibility in the garden. I want to make as little of a footprint with plastics or money, really. I don't want to spend a lot of money when I garden, but yeah, we all say that, right? But we do. So if you have to buy one sprayer, I would buy something like this. I would go to Agway, or where's the place here? Anywhere, Mahoney's, Eastman's. There's another. What's the other garden?
Soars.
Aubuchon.
Soars. Go to Soars.
Soars, and buy a sprayer like this. You don't need a backpack sprayer. That's for pretty large spraying, but something like this, and it's a pump sprayer, so it works by and it comes, you put your chemical in here, you measure it with some tablespoons or teaspoons. I would go buy a set of plastic measuring spoons and keep it just with this stuff. Don't go back and forth in your kitchen, with them. Just a cheap set for that. And you put it in there, you mix it with the water, do this. You don't have to fill the whole thing up. You can just use this much if that's all you need. But you have to figure out how much you need for that. And I'll talk about that later. Because the labels can be very daunting. I don't know if any of you have ever read a label and you go, oh my God, I can't figure out what to do here, kind of thing. So you pump it up like this to get your pressure, all right? And then you spray. Now, that looks like a big sprayer, doesn't it? If you want to invest in 2 sprayers, you can get a little handheld thing like this. When you just have a small job and you want to go and do it. The problem with these is they don't last very long. They seem to, every year, it seems like you need a new one. Is that your experience? They last for a while and then they're not so great anymore. So that's why I'm saying money-wise, maybe just invest in the bigger one. I have both. We have a number of sprayers at home. We brought them with us from our farm, whatever. So that's why we have so many. Now I'm going to talk about the chemicals that I think, shouldn't say chemicals, product formulations, all right? You can tell I came from a chemical background. All right, these are all OMRI approved methods for helping your pests in your garden. The first one I'm going to talk about is diatomaceous earth. All right? All right? This is a very fine, it's like a sand made out of diatoms. They're like little silica gel things. It's also used in swimming pool filters, diatomaceous earth. Don't use that. You want to get a food grade approved diatomaceous earth. Don't use the stuff you would use in your swimming pool. You want to use this. And it probably will say OMRI on it. Maybe not because it isn't the kind of thing that would have to be approved. It's something different. So this works by, as an insecticide, by if you put it on your plants, your little soft things like aphids or soft-bodied insects crawl through that silica in the diatomaceous earth, and it kills them. In other words, it slices it a little bit. And so it's a very effective, very safe way of controlling insects. But you have to keep reapplying it. If it isn't there, if the rain washes it off or the wind washes it off or something. So you have to keep reapplying it.
And wear a mask if it's windy.
Yeah.
Or all together.
Because you don't want to breathe it in. So it'll irritate you.
Yeah. It's not going to hurt you bad. It's just you don't want to deal with that.
So I'm trying to think about something else about diatomaceous earth. What more can you add about that?
It's great for us. We had an infestation of ants.
Yes.
And so we
In your house, yeah.
We had to do it around our garden.
Yep.
And it literally just
Yep.
eradicated the ants.
People have had big problems with ants in their garden. I, knock on wood, this isn't wood, but whatever, have not. But I have a friend who's had terrible, they eat everything and...
We had it at, a lot of us had it at, we have a garden plot at
Emerald?
Emerald.
Oh, really?
Quite a few of us had the ant.
Ah, okay.
So, you know the history of that? There was an ant mound this tall on that property when we first looked at it.
Oh, really? Oh.
So because when this garden was getting sited, those the 2 locations we looked at, an Emerald House before the town went in, there was a mountain. We were like, maybe not this site right yet. We're gonna clean that up. So that's probably why you had it. But I've used diatomaceous earth and powdered sugar together for house ants, a little cap full, just on, where you're seeing them, and then they
Oh, the powdered sugar attracts them, and then the diatomaceous
take it with
does
them.
them in.
Yeah, and then
Very tricky.
very tricky
No, it's a good idea.
and reasonably priced.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the products that there's many OMR products. I'm only going to talk about a few which I think are reasonable for you guys to use. I have many more at home because we had a large farm, and so I brought a lot of stuff with us. The first one that you really should have is something called BT. It has different names. This is Captain Jack's brand. I also have one called Dipel, and I also have one called Thuricide. They're all labels, they're all brand names for an organism called Bacillus thuringiensis, and it is a bacteria which has activity against insects. All right, it is is very, very effective against caterpillars. It's very effective against Colorado potato beetles. Who's had problems with them? Most everyone. If you try to grow eggplant or potatoes, the BTs are great for that. It's great for the worms that go on your kale or your Brussels sprouts or your broccoli, those green worms. BT, that's what you want.
There's lots of brand names.
There's lots of brand names, but you want the Bacillus thuringiensis. So there's Captain Jack's, there's, this is a bonide called Thuricide. It plays off the thuringiensis, you get it, Thuricide. And it's a great tool. That's all I can say. The other thing that's good for controlling beetles is this Monterey garden insect spray, which the active chemical in that, the active compound, is called spinosad. Okay, I have a sheet so you can take a photo, a screenshot of it with all these words. So the spinosad is very effective against flea beetles and other caterpillars and stuff. Some of the same things as BT, but it also controls other things. Pyganic is another one. They're all OMRI. This helps with certain insects. Now, we're going to talk about your tomatoes. How many of you actually sprayed your tomatoes for fungus, you did, for leaf molds and stuff? Great. What did you use? Copper?
Yes.
Copper, and did you use anything else with it, or?
All I had in the shed was copper. So
Did you spray like once a week, or what did you do? Or just when you saw it, or?
I saw it.
Yeah. Now, are you at Emerald House?
Yes.
Did you notice your tomatoes were better than other people's because you'd sprayed?
Well, I sprayed the ones at home.
I'm just-
We also have a home garden.
Okay, all right.
The one in the Emerald is hers.
Oh. I'm just saying, if in order for your spraying, organic spraying to be effective on your tomatoes for your early blight and your other leaf molds and leaf spots, you have to be diligent and do it on a regular schedule. In other words, you have to do it before you see it. It isn't gonna be like if you see it and spray it, it's gonna kill it. That isn't how organic materials work. Conventional materials, some of them work like that. And that's why conventional farmers like them, because they work like that. But there's downsides to obviously using those products. So, for many reasons.
Right, they're not selective. They kill everything.
Yeah. So,
Scorched earth.
So if you're gonna do your tomatoes, we're gonna talk about it later in another session. But that's a whole different ball game of committing yourself to spraying. And you definitely would need a bigger sprayer. You're definitely going to need more chemical. But if you're diligent and you spray with your copper, it's a copper fungicide. It's also OMRI. And you think, oh, copper, I don't want copper. Well, copper is an element that is not harmful. You know, when we would spray with the copper, I always washed it before we sold at market, but a lot of the other farmers didn't. Yes.
I was wondering about the diatomaceous soil. Eventually, it goes into the soil. How does it affect worms? Because they're crawling around in there, and they can get ripped up.
Yeah. Probably it's not concentrated enough to affect the worm. You know what I mean? I think.
I feel like once it gets
But I don't
wet,
know. That's a good question,
when it-
actually.
Worms, I'm thrilled.
Yeah. It's a good
I think
question.
the crystalline structure just changes as it gets wet, which makes it less effective, which is why the reapplying is so important. So it has to be that dry, crystally, because I think it's just sea life.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
like
Diatoms.
Yeah, so it's it's luckily it's natural, but I think once it's in the soil, it starts to get broken down more than it would. I haven't noticed a decline in my worms when I use it at all, because I like, when I'm doing my checks, I go top to bottom. Yeah. You had a question? Yeah?
I had a question about the spraying for the blight on the tomatoes, that sort of thing. You mentioned some sort of diligence there, but are there any impacts with respect to rain, environmental factors?
Yes. So,
After, what's the recommendation?
yeah. So if you're gonna, personally, this is what I do with my tomatoes, and I try to. I need to be more diligent myself. I alternate between copper, which is here, and I alternate between that and another product called Serenade. All right. Serenade is also a bacillus organism, Bacillus subtilis. It's a different cultivar of the one for BT, but this has activity against fungi. So I alternate between them on a week-to-week thing. If you have just sprayed and you get a pouring rain, you should reapply. All right?
Or hold off till that rain's over.
Especially if it hasn't dried yet or anything like that. I think that if you spray diligently and on a week thing like that, you can get your tomatoes to go into September anyway. I mean, if you look at the gardens around here, the tomatoes are down by the third week in August for the most part. You know, the Alternaria and the Septoria, those are the two fungi that are taking it down. They've done their job because most people haven't sprayed, and because we're in a community garden, the disease pressure, do you know what I mean by that? The spores, everything is very high. Your home garden, you may not even see these things on your tomatoes. But here, there's a lot of people who have not taken care of their gardens as much as they should. And they can do anything they want. It's a community garden. So you're going to have more disease pressure here than you will at home. And the first year you grow at home, you can probably grow your tomatoes without spraying them and they'll be great. The second year, little more moves in.
That first year you feel like a rock star.
Right. And the first year you say, well, I don't understand why everyone doesn't grow organically. There's no need to spray. I don't know why. Well, then as you go on, you realize that.
With the sun. So weed in the sun, harvest in the, whoa, there's like a piece of candy. Weird. Where did that come from? Harvest when it's cloudy or in the morning or in the evening, and weed when the sun is up, right? Just let them fry. Or what I'll do is I'll leave them in the walkway. So this field we're finishing prepping. This was garlic last year, then there was tomatoes behind that. There were 6 different types of kale here. We harvested it all the way till December, and now you can see it's growing again. It's like little trees. We're hoping to tool you guys up to be 4-season gardeners. So come August, we're going to start talking about what you start planting in little seed trays for the fall, what you can direct seed now to keep your harvest going, because there's certain things that will just keep on trucking. Spinach doesn't require a lot of cover. It's delicious, it's healthy, like all the things, right? These tools are just, I use them sideways sometimes. Yeah. That's why I go sideways sometimes, because they don't always pop out. But then, this is my favorite. This is why this is my favorite. And then I come through and I rake it out. Oh, what is that? I wonder what that one is. I like certain weeds. So, does anybody know what this one is? It's called chickweed. It is really good for you and actually quite tasty in a salad. Yeah. So it's got a spinachy taste. It will take over. So just be careful with those sorts of things. But if you have an edible weed, it's not that bad. It becomes a mat and becomes like a ground cover, which is keep the soil covered, right? Grasses, always keep out of the way. I want to show you guys this because this is what we're looking for. This is healthy soil. This is not a plant root. I want to show you this. This is mycelium. This is the good stuff. So if your soil's got this going on, you're doing something right. I'm going to pass that around, get a good shot of it. It wasn't attached to the roots. So I use a lot of wood chips. And it's because I don't till, right? I let it be as much as humanly possible. So you want to pass it around or just look at it?
I just learned something new today. I've been getting rid of all of that. I thought that was like
Feel free to touch it, feel it. So I'll tell you something really cool they're finding out, because science, right?
I always thought it was thread.
So it is threads. And so this is the stuff forests are made of, okay? So The Secret Life of Trees, have you all heard of that book? One of the neat things that the science is showing now is that those root hairs in your plants have a symbiotic relationship with the mycelial networks. Okay? So plants can't move, but mycelial networks go all over the place. They're connected. So if they need water, if they need nutrients, they are literally going like this to the ends of the root hairs, and they're trading sugars, because the photosynthesis, pumping sugars down in carbon into the soil, which is why the carbon cycle, it works. And that's why no-till regenerative farming is actually kind of a carbon solution, they're finding out, because you can sink carbon into your soil, which is what you want and need, right? Because all the microbes, all the bugs, they want that carbon. So encouraging that is really great, right? So yes, there's so many things. I do, but I like to leave it on top. So what we're gonna do to this field is do what we did to the garlic field, which is we come in with a broad fork. I don't want to mess up my garlic. So this is just leftover garlic that got broken. So there'll be a bed here and a little walkway. I'll just start here. This has never really been broad forked, but it was under mulch. So mulch encourages loosening of the soil just because the worms, they're protected. They go in and they dig and they loosen it up. So you want to get that bar all the way to the top. Go back a foot. So if you're doing this in your home garden, I don't disturb I plant like this. I don't come in, I till, I don't even rake it. I go in with my digger, make a hole, put some compost in it, plant right in, tuck it in. The less you can disturb, the more all that network is going to be quicker to come in and join your plant. And then the beauty about that relationship underground is the plants are healthier because they're stronger, right? So they can resist disease better, they can resist pests better. So it's a whole symbiotic relationship. There are myceliums that are parasitic, but the ones she's talking about with the tomatoes and spraying, not the good ones, right? So there's good, bad bacteria, same thing with your body, your gut. There's good, there's bad. Some make you sick, some make you thrive. We're just learning a lot about it. If anybody wants to try this, to feel it, warm yourselves up. The other thing I do, which you'll notice over here, is that one of my favorite tools for farming. I highly recommend if you're starting a garden from your front lawn, put a tarp down, you're ready to go in the spring. So I'll peel it back so you see. This was a whole field of mugwort before, and this is the first time we're gonna work this field since we covered it. So the nice thing is you have all of this left over. This is organic matter. This is good. And it's toast, right? It's dead, it's not gonna hurt anything. This was grasses. This was the weeds. So you can see here on the edges where the sunlight could peek through, the weeds are still trying to come up. But what happened here, it's almost scorched earth. And compared to what was, it was a blanket of noxious weeds, which we had tilled, which we had sprayed, which we had tilled again, which we had cover cropped densely. Nothing worked, right? And my original desire was to just tarp it, but I had to listen to everybody else before they would let me do what I knew would work. But now we have, compared to what the mugwort looked like, it's not really coming back. My theory is, so weeds are an indicator plant. Does anybody know what that means? It lets you know what's going on. So weeds show up when you have open ground, right? If you move some dirt or if you rake some leaves, it's bare ground, the first thing that shows up is weeds. They're doing a good thing. They're covering that ground. It's not what you want, but it's important ecosystem service that weeds provide is that they're protecting that soil. And they especially like crappy soil. So if you have a new space or the edge of the road, like when they do construction, it's like all the worst weeds show up there. But what they're doing is they're stabilizing the soil, they're covering the soil, and they're just existing in crappy soil that most other things don't want to grow in. But once we improved the soil here, like over here, like this hasn't been touched really. So we haven't added compost yet. We got a big old pile, lots of work to do. So what we're gonna do is broad fork and compost. So I'll grab the broad fork, and I'm serious if anybody wants to try it. It's a lot of fun. We'll be doing a lot of this on Monday nights. Come on down.
When does that start on Mondays?
So that starts next week. Come watch the eclipse with me, y'all.
I have just another question.
Yeah.
So before you put the tarp down, is this actually grass, or had you remove the grass and then put the
Nope,
tarp?
you put it right on top. You can also do this with cardboard. So free, I like free, don't buy a tarp. Don't do it if you can't afford it, but underneath here, let's see, better example, this is newer. You can see this, there's a little leftover cardboard. But see here, this went straight down on top of grass, okay? And that's how we've done all the walkways here. All these pathways where you're just like, I don't want to deal with you for a few years. Some thick cardboard. I work at Katuitt Solar. We use the solar boxes. So I got access to way too much cardboard. and then a good thick layer of chips. So the theory on wood chips is that they rob nitrogen from the soil. Has anybody heard that? Yeah. It's true. First year wood chips, fresh carbon just cut off a tree. Second year, if it's been sitting in a giant pile for a year, you can put it in the walkways. You can add it as mulch. It's not going to sponge it out of your soil. But when you use it like this, it doesn't matter because you're not planting here, right? So it's a great use of fresh chips. It lasts longer, decomposes slower because they're fresh. I put wood chips in all of my walkways. I dig almost like this, almost a foot if I can, if I'm feeling ambitious, 6 inches if I'm not. And I put wood chips in between, so it would be bed chips. Like you'll see in the garlic as you walk over. My mulch blew away because I didn't have mulched leaves. I highly recommend if you have leaves at home, go over them with the lawnmower a few times and use them in the garden. They're amazing. The worms love them. You know, don't do what I did, which was take free leaves in a dump truck. We're low budget. Just kidding.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
The leaves, I bury them. Now I'm turning the soil over, so I shouldn't be doing that.
You bury the leaves and then you flip them.
Let them rot.
Yeah, let them rot.
But I mean, I'm turning the soil over. You know
To
what I
bury them in the fall.
mean? Yeah.
So in the spring, are you flipping it again?
No.
All right, it's had all winter to kind of reboot.
How about pine cones? Are they good for anything?
Not really because
Oh my God.
they're good for acidic.
ones.
If you have, well, the big ones are hard because they, huh? Yeah, there you go. Bird feeders, craft projects for the kids.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes you hit a rock or sometimes you just feel the compaction. So this was a farm field for a while and I can always feel when I get to that hard pan. See how strong those handles are? So you can see. So
How much does that poo cost?
it's like $200, but it's really strong. So in theory, I would have a dugout pathway, and this is about all the bed prep I do. If I don't have to direct seed a crop, and I know that I am going to just plant something like a tomato or an eggplant, something that's just going to go boop, as little disturbance as humanly possible, compost, and then mulch. That's it. And I say I'm a lazy gardener. I mean it in the best possible way. I got other stuff to do. I want to harvest. I want to plant and I want to harvest. Those are the funnest things about growing food, right? And eating, yes. Well, I mean, I'm in it for the meals. I don't know about y'all, but
Where do you get your mulch?
the mulch, it depends on what it is. So I'll take free leaves, whether they're right or not. The straw we use, straw is much better for garlic. So that's where the garlic was last year, and I got it from a farmer friend. He got it in Westport. You want to use straw because the tops have been taken for wheat. A lot of times it's Canadian straw. It's really hard to get organic.
What about seaweed?
Seaweed is a fantastic mulch if you can get, especially if you have a small garden, if you can get a truckload or a couple, buckets at a time when you're at the beach. It's great.
Do you leave it on?
I use it like straw. Nice thick layer. Usually the salt's been washed off in the rain, and a little bit of salt's okay.
So you use grass?
You can use grass clippings, but the trick is you can't go too thick because it turns into this like fermented, nasty smelling slop. But I go ahead and I'll use grass clippings, but you got to kind of sprinkle it on in the right layer. And it's nice because it's wet and it stays put. And then it dries out in the sun and you have a nice matted little layer of grass clippings. I think grass clippings are fantastic for gardens just because they're close, they're free, and they work, right? So,
You have to be careful as you put chemicals on your lawn.
well, I just hope you're not doing that. Or you're using the organic things. So one of the things, I foliar feed a lot, so I fertilize with compost. Tommy, I think you were asking about compost and fertilizing. I am a liquid fertilizer girl myself, so I'm using sprayers or even a watering can. So I have a big old jug for the season. It's fish emulsion-y, sort of Neptune's Harvest-like stuff, right? And I use that, and you can use that on lawns. And it's pretty, you can use urine on lawns. Not that most people want to do that.
If you have boys.
Or if you have boys.
My grandson.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a 7-year-old, so I'm like, he knows the walkways are the only place to pee, because that's where the wood chips are. That's it.
Oh,
So nitrogen, phosphorus, two main things that are in urine that are also in our estuaries because they're not getting fully taken.
Get that nice soil.
When your septic system gets full and your effluent goes in, a lot of times the urine is mixed in with that. So the septics aren't necessarily taking nitrogen and phosphorus out in the quantities we think they are. And that's one of the issues besides fertilizers on lawns is septic systems not quite doing the job. So there's a whole push in town, I'm sure you've heard about the urine diverting stuff, right? Some people are ick, some people are rah-rah. It all depends on your worldview. I'm not gonna do any of that here. I just will tell you that I use it on certain areas because I have a urine diverting toilet. I'm very picky about where I use it. Perennials, great, right? Hydrangeas, things that are just there that you're gonna spend money fertilizing anyway. Have a bucket in the shed for the boys, and then you have it, and you use it when you can, but it's icky. But it's also icky that it's like gonna ruin our economy if it shuts the beaches down, right? So it's like you gotta weigh the ick factor. Dogs getting sick from drinking pond water because it's green, full of nutrients it doesn't need to be there. So it's just, that conversation's happening, and I encourage you to think about it. But also buy some fish emulsion and don't think about it again if you're icked. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But my recommendation is you can foliar feed, but compost is the win. So if you can get a good compost, it's basically can act as a mulch. You want to put a mulch on top of it because it will just dry it out. So I would put straw or composted wood chips, seaweed, something on top of this. And we'll go over that when our next workshop when we're planting tomatoes. I am like a heavy mulcher tomatoes girl because like Warren's saying is the soil is where those organisms live. And as soon as that splash up happens, it hits your leaves, it's off to the races with the mycelium on the leaves, and it's gonna get your tomatoes. So if you can mulch heavy so that no rain splashes up into your tomato leaves, you're gonna hold it back a little bit longer. It's just one of those techniques that we'll talk about next time.
Compost is the town of Falmouth has at the dump.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend using that? Because I don't know what's in it.
Me neither.
Me neither.
I don't.
I use it on my flowers.
Yeah.
I use it on my landscape. I don't know as I'd use it on my vegetables. Just because of that, I mean...
Yeah. Landscapers don't always... Some guys fertilizing, some guys mowing. They don't talk to each other. Nobody means to do these things. It's just the way our world has kind of, snowballed down this hill of like perfect lawns and, at all costs sort of things. So I would try All Cape Recycling. I would try Blacksmith Shop Farms, and you can ask them what's in their mix. A lot of them, it's more trees, leaves than grass clippings. Some landscapers prefer certain spots because it costs less, those sorts of things.
Grass clippings from commercial landscapers are going to have a lot of chemicals. I mean, we do nothing to our lawn, and I'm not judging people that do. Oh, yes, I am. No.
No, I'm not. Yes, I am.
Just putting chemicals on your lawn, think about it. Do you really want to do that? Is your lawn that important to you that, anyway, that's...
How about lime?
Yeah.
Lime, if it needs it.
Well,
And
moss all over my...
Yes, and most of the soils here need lime. I wanted to bring up two things. One is don't wait until you need your your products to go get them.
Yeah.
Because that's when everyone else is going to be going to get their products. And you go to Mahoney's and they're sold out of BT, and you know what? It's the end of August. No, we're not going to get any more in. So if you're going to plan to do that, go get your stuff now. You don't have to, you can do it Amazon if you want, but I try to do local, but you can use the Amazon you want. The other question I had, what about wood chips?
Mm-hmm.
Taking nitrogen out of the soil. You know, what about that philosophy about wood chips? And I know you know a lot about that.
I spoke
but
a
it used
little
to be
bit
they
earlier.
said not to, you know.
Yeah, it does at first when they're fresh. So I was saying that the carbon's fresh, went from a tree to a chip, and it wants to suck it all up. So those are where the bucket of urine in your shed, or you can fish emulsion. You can fertilize your wood chips if you want to put fresh ones in the walkway, but you got to give it something, or it's going to pull from your soil, which is pulling from your plants, right? So you can use fresh wood chips. I recommend if they're in your bed space, like if they're going to be in your growing space, like the way I do them, I use them like a sponge, which is why they're in my walkways. So they're easier to weed, like the wheel hose slices right through them. So if I have to weed my walkways, I'm like jogging through it with my wheel hoe, and that's it. But they have to be partially composted, or you have to charge them up with some nitrogen.
What about the bags of compost? You know, the bags of wood chips you buy at Home Depot or
Wood chips?
mulch. It has black mulch or different
So
colors.
I have mixed feelings about it in a garden where you eat from, because if you smell it when they're spreading it all spring, nothing smells natural about it. There's dyes, the red ones, the black ones are probably dyed because most chips don't end up that color. A lot of it's bark mulch. Huh?
It's rubber.
Oh, yeah.
I do put it in my flower beds.
That's fine. I mean, that's...
Well, there's that place down on down past Mahoney's, right? That sells all that.
Oh, yeah.
All Cape, yeah.
Bagway?
No, all Cape. What's it called?
All Cape recycling.
We get our mulch there.
Yeah.
For our gardens, for our landscape gardens, not
Not for food,
ornamental.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I mean-
But if I don't use anything like that in my, I would if I, you know, it's different. Jeny's growing on a huge, much bigger scale than we are now. When we had our farm, we did things that we, you know, but I'm careful what I put into this little plot here, you know, and I would, what do I mulch? We use wood chips just in the beginning, like a little pathway, but I don't use the wood chips to mulch around. I think straw is your best, probably better. You can buy those. You can't. This is too big.
Not this scale, but...
But if you go to
Just a half step to the right, if you don't mind.
no, I mean you can go buy those bales of hay, and they're chopped up hay, right? Or
Chopped straw, yeah.
And it's a cup, 2 of those will do your garden.
And it's got, a lot of it has, those ones have like molasses sprayed on them. So it's sticky, and the microbes love it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Get
That's
that at Mahoney's?
Yeah.
You can get it at there's a farm place
Yeah.
across
Yes.
from,
Wilcoit Feed and Grain.
Feed and seed.
They're great over there.
That's where I've gotten it.
They are avid gardeners too. Love them. They're great for advice.
Yes.
John over there is wonderful.
But you want to get it now?
Yes.
Because
They don't have it.
The straw will be out of
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ask for chopped straw.
So that stuff comes in a plastic bale rather than a strung bale.
Yeah.
So they're almost the same price now, which is